Durante milênios, o solo sagrado do Oriente Médio foi banhado de sangue. Nessa terra, as cicatrizes deixadas pelas batalhas entre as 3 maiores religiões do mundo mancharam o solo. Mas a maior ferida foi infligida pela guerra entre cristãos e muçulmanos, que nasceu no final do século XI e durou 200 anos. Estava em jogo uma estreita faixa de terra de poucas centenas de quilômetros, que continha um prêmio de valor incalculável: Jerusalém. Hoje, essa guerra santa é contada como uma lenda. Mas há quem tenha visto as batalhas com os próprios olhos. Grandes historiadores de 2 mundos diferentes, cristão e muçulmano, relataram feitos heróicos, disputas ferozes e grandes guerreiros, homens que sacrificaram a vida em nome de seus deuses. Este é o conflito entre 2 povos de fé inabalável, o choque entre a meia-lua e a cruz. Estas são as Cruzadas. As Cruzadas, a meia-lua e a cruz. A primeira cruzada. De todas as cidades do mundo, Jerusalém é aquela com o passado e certamente o futuro mais conturbado. Para os judeus é a terra que abriga os templos de Herodes e Salomão. Para os muçulmanos, o local de onde Maomé ascendeu aos céus. E para os católicos, o solo onde o Messias foi crucificado. Após sua morte, a palavra de Jesus Cristo criou raízes, e Jerusalém aos poucos se livrou de quase 400 anos de ocupação romana para abraçar a fé cristã. Até que no século VII, a cidade sagrada foi tomada à força por uma nova crença, o islamismo. Quatro séculos depois, os cristãos reivindicaram a posse de Jerusalém e cerca de 60 mil guerreiros espalhados pela Europa se reuniram para a batalha. Um dos líderes foi o veterano chefe militar, Duque Godofredo de Bouillon. Seu exército partiu em uma cruzada de 3 anos e percorreu 5.000 quilômetros para retomar Jerusalém em nome de Deus. Godofredo era mais que apenas um aclamado guerreiro. Além de grande benfeitor da Igreja Católica, o Duque era um homem extremamente devoto.
As far as I'm concerned, there's one key thing that's driving people to take up the cross. And that is that they actually believe that this crusade is a spiritual war and that it's going to purify their souls of sin. And yes, I'm sure they've got other agendas, they've got other things they're looking for at the same time, but if there's one thing that's at the core and that it's across the largest range of people, it's spirituality, it's religion that's driving this.
The Franks, which was the catch-all word for everyone who participated in the Crusades, were regarded for many centuries until this day as barbarians who came to destroy the peak of Islamic civilization. And this is a very strong thing which goes down right to this day. So the word crusade is electric and people know it. They know what happened in that world.
Havia bons motivos para arriscar tudo em uma jornada para uma terra distante e talvez sem volta. Arruinada pela fome e por guerras mesquinhas, a Europa era uma região amaldiçoada. Seu povo decidiu buscar uma vida melhor neste mundo e no próximo.
I think if you were to take a time machine back to the late 11th century, the first thing that would probably strike you is what a violent society it was. We're at a time when sort of central government's not very well organised, the great monarchies of France and Spain haven't developed. It's petty lordships, local castellans, they raid, they fight, they scrap one another. It's a time of endemic lawlessness.
Uma das figuras mais eruditas do mundo cristão pintou um retrato fiel desse cenário caótico. Guilherme de Tiro, arcebispo e conselheiro real, relatou as cruzadas conforme seu testemunho ocular.
In nearly all the circle of the earth, belief had failed. The fear of the Lord no longer prevailed among men. Justice had perished from the world. Violence held sway among the nations. Fraud, treachery and chicanery overshadowed all things. All virtue had departed and ceased to exist as useless. Evil reigned in its stead.
Apenas uma instituição era poderosa o bastante para dar um basta na anarquia vigente: a Igreja. Na Europa ocidental do século XI, o catolicismo era a fé prevalecente.
The world of the Middle Ages was a world that was deeply concerned with matters of religion. And it's almost impossible for us in a secular age today to overestimate how concerned they were. It's almost impossible for us to understand how concerned they were.
People are bombarded with the fact that they are threatened by sin from all forms of life. Just about everything they can do in life is potentially sinful. It's literally as if the air they're breathing is contaminated with a sin.
A Igreja absolvia o homem de seus pecados, mas não tinha força política para livrar toda a sociedade de seus males. A rixa secular com os governantes da Europa relegou o papado a um segundo plano até o ano de 1088 e a chegada de um novo papa a Roma. Seu nome era Urbano II.
Pope Urban was an astute individual, a man who understood the political and social and religious currents and needs of his time, someone who knew how to bring those things together and channel them into productive outlets.
O Papa Urbano precisava de um plano para colocar novamente a Igreja Católica no mapa político. A resposta às suas preces viria na forma de um pedido de ajuda de um velho rival. Em 1095, um pedido de ajuda foi enviado ao chefe da Igreja Católica, o Papa Urbano II. Enviado pela Corte Imperial de Constantinopla, o apelo veio em nome de um rival do Oriente, o chefe político da Igreja Ortodoxa da Grécia e imperador bizantino, Aleixo I. O poder de Aleixo era cada vez menor. A influência da Igreja Ortodoxa chegara a alcançar o Oriente Médio. Recém-convertidos ao islamismo, os turcos seljúcidas saíram das estepes da Ásia Central e migraram para o Oriente Médio em busca de terras. Seu exército era formado por dezenas de milhares de guerreiros destemidos que conquistaram o território muçulmano da Pérsia, Síria e Palestina, e finalmente se apossaram da cidade sagrada de Jerusalém. Agora eles cobiçavam o norte e seguiam para Constantinopla, a grande capital bizantina.
The status quo, the existing power politics, the power balance of the region was changed. The Byzantines had lost a great area of taxation, of recruitment for troops. They'd lost a lot of prestige as well.
A única esperança do imperador Aleixo era responder ao ataque, mas sozinho seria impossível. Em nome da fraternidade cristã, ele pediu ao Papa que enviasse uma força de cavaleiros para ajudá-lo a combater os turcos. Era a oportunidade que o Papa esperava de finalmente aumentar seu poder político.
You've got to understand that the popes of that period were politicians. Much more so than they are now. Even now, the current pope intervenes in politics all the time. But at that time, the popes were big players, scheming, manipulating, intriguing, politicking. They were basically the politicians of the church.
O Papa Urbano II decidiu impedir o infortúnio do Império Bizantino e deu início à própria Guerra Santa contra o islamismo, uma cruzada que fortaleceria seu papado e colocaria Roma novamente no centro do cenário político mundial.
The idea of the crusade satisfies a number of particular agendas for the Pope. It allows him to increase his authority over the knighthood of Western Europe at the expense of other secular rulers. It directs the violent knights away from their practices of brutalizing the church in the West. It also rolls back the infidel. It begins to allow the Christians to reclaim the holy places.
Em novembro de 1095, o Papa proferiu um sermão a céu aberto na cidade francesa de Clermont. Foi um chamado para que príncipes, reis, clérigos e plebeus travassem uma guerra sob a bandeira da Igreja Católica.
Urban must have been a remarkably charismatic and effective speaker. Being at his speech must have been like being at some kind of mass rally, a Billy Graham crusade, a pop concert, something like elements of all of those things together. There were thousands and thousands of people there.
O sermão foi uma demonstração de astúcia e persuasão religiosa. Com a ajuda de histórias exageradas sobre atrocidades muçulmanas contra os peregrinos cristãos na Terra Santa, o Papa transformou os turcos em demônios e apresentou a cruzada como a guerra entre duas crenças.
His words seem to proceed from God. They were received by young and old alike eagerly as a command from on high. The cradle of our faith, the native land of our Lord and the mother of salvation, is now forcibly held by a people without God. For many years now, the wicked race of Saracens, followers of unclean practices, have oppressed with tyrannical violence the holy places where the feet of our Lord rested. Dogs have entered into the holy places. Priests have been slain in the sanctuaries, virgins forced to choose between prostitution and death by torture.
The emotional intensity of the moment was very high, and when the end of the speech was reached, Urban gave an appeal, and people came forward from the crowd to take the cross, literally to take strips of cloth and to put them on their clothing, over their breast, over their heart perhaps, and to indicate that they were taking vows and were going to go to the east to rescue their brothers.
Diante das promessas de honra e glória, dezenas de milhares de homens e mulheres, incluindo famílias e vilarejos inteiros, responderam ao chamado do Papa Urbano. Mas para muitos, como um jovem cavaleiro que relatou a jornada para Jerusalém, o atrativo era outro, a promessa de grandes riquezas.
Our Lord, the Pope, said if anyone wished to save their souls, they must not hesitate to undertake with humble spirit the way of the Lord. And if he did not have a great deal of money, divine mercy should provide for him. Then he said, take the road to the Holy Sepulchre. Rescue that land from a dreadful race. Rule over it yourselves, for that land floweth with milk and honey.
Nothing is ever motivated purely by religion or ideology they knew perfectly well that there was a lot of wealth in that part of the world. It was the center of trade. All the trading caravans passed through this world. And so they wanted the money. It was as simple as that.
Mas a oferta de riqueza sem fim e terras que jorravam leite e mel era apenas uma parte do prêmio. Pouco depois, uma nova recompensa foi oferecida para a congregação. Em uma decisão sem precedentes, o Papa prometeu um lugar no céu para a alma daqueles que aceitassem a cruzada.
For those of you who once fought against brother and relative, now rightfully fight against the barbarians. Know then that whoever sets out on this journey not out of lust for worldly advantage, but only for salvation of his soul and liberation of the church, is remitted in entirety all penance for his sins.
Pope Urban marketed the crusade brilliantly. He struck a number of chords that the knights of Western Europe wanted to hear. He said, look, you're living these violent lives. If you don't atone for your sins, you're going to go to hell. What the crusade offered was a way of carrying on fighting and also receiving a spiritual reward. That was the deal. If you went on crusade, you got the remission of all your sins. You would not go to hell.
O sermão do Papa certamente testava os limites da doutrina cristã. Em sua Guerra Santa, o cruzado tinha a bênção de Deus para ignorar o sexto mandamento, não matarás, contanto que a vítima fosse um infiel.
This is violence which God actually wants, and he wants it so much that he's actually going to give a spiritual reward to people who participate in it. It's literally like opening Pandora's box. I'm not sure he's actually conscious of how dangerous an idea he's tampering with at Clermont. But what it leads to is a very powerful upsurge of a sense of hatred of the outsider, if you like, in Western Europe, and a turning against anyone who seems to be other than what is an accepted norm, a Western Christian.
Incitados pelas palavras do Papa, alguns fanáticos ansiavam por derramar sangue antes mesmo de a cruzada deixar a Europa. Para esses fundamentalistas, qualquer não cristão era um herege, e havia hereges por toda parte.
But the pilgrims rose up in a spirit of cruelty against the Jews. They inflicted a most cruel slaughter on them, claiming that the killings would be of service against the enemies of Christianity. They attacked them, decapitated many. They destroyed their homes and synagogues, and even divided all the looted money amongst themselves.
Em nome de Deus, milhares de judeus foram massacrados na Europa. O assassinato e o massacre de inocentes foi a marca registrada da Primeira Cruzada. No outono de 1096, quase um ano após o sermão do Papa Urbano, exércitos da França, Alemanha e Itália deram início à épica marcha de 5.000 quilômetros para salvar seus irmãos cristãos e libertar a Terra Santa do domínio muçulmano. À frente do exército do norte da Europa estava o Duque Godofredo de Bouillon.
Godfrey was one of the senior leaders of the First Crusade. He was a very pious man. In fact, we know that he brought a number of monks with him on the expedition to help him in his daily prayers. He was also a great warrior. He won repute before the crusade for his feats in single combat, and he was a respected man who the leaders of the expedition felt they could all deal with.
Ao lado de Godofredo, seguia seu irmão caçula Balduíno, o conde de Bolonha. Apesar de impiedoso, Balduíno fora destinado ao sacerdócio, mas seu amor pela guerra e pelas mulheres falou mais alto.
Writers talk about being plagued by lust and the sins of the flesh. You said to be quite discreet about all of this, but it is an aspect of his character. He's also a very pragmatic man, and somebody who would not hesitate to brush aside others if they crossed him.
Para reconstruir os passos do Duque Godofredo e do Conde Balduíno, o historiador John France utiliza fontes do século XI como guia. Esses registros medievais revelam a dura realidade da vida nas cruzadas.
To take the cross must have been very, very expensive. We know that people sold land, we know that they mortgaged land. They seem to have tried to raise about 6 years' income just to live through the crusade. A rich man would have had a whole retinue. He'd have come, with his household, with everybody who would normally accompany him. And possibly wives. It's often forgotten that many wives came with their husbands because they too were inspired by this remarkable opportunity for salvation. So what you have on the crusade is a sort of city, as a whole society, moving eastwards towards Jerusalem. The problems of feeding that are absolutely immense. I mean, it is almost inconceivable how they did it. We would guess that they stole stuff, but fundamentally they were probably buying from the local peasants who would be glad to sell, but at very high prices.
Durante quase 6 meses, o exército de Godofredo percorreu milhares de quilômetros e cruzou rios e montanhas do leste europeu, até finalmente juntar forças com outros exércitos do sul no local previamente combinado, o centro espiritual do cristianismo oriental, Constantinopla. Constantinopla é hoje Istambul, cartão de visitas da Turquia e cidade majoritariamente muçulmana. Mas 9 séculos atrás, esta era a última cidade cristã antes de o exército cruzar o Estreito de Bósforo e entrar em território inimigo. Na época, o maior tesouro da cidade era a Catedral Ortodoxa Cristã de Santa Sofia. Coberta por mosaicos de ouro polido, a construção era um documento vivo da lendária riqueza de Constantinopla. Mas os cruzados não chegariam a vê-la de perto. Cercando a capital bizantina, havia 2 muros concêntricos de 16 quilômetros de extensão e 9 metros de altura. Para os povos amigos, o imperador abria os imponentes portões e autorizava a entrada. Mas para os cruzados, a passagem permaneceu fechada.
Well, here are the remains of the magnificent Golden Gate, one of the 10 entrances to the city of Constantinople. This was originally a triumphal arch. You can see the 3 elements of the arch here. It reminds one a little bit of the Arc de Triomphe. Atop this structure, you would have had 4 bronze elephants, and around it there would have been a series of friezes depicting the deeds of the classical heroes of antiquity. When the Crusaders arrived out here, these doors would have been shining and dazzling, and of course closed before them.
Furioso, o imperador Aleixo ordenou que os portões fossem lacrados. Um exército católico de 60 mil homens não era o que ele tinha em mente quando pediu para que o Papa Urbano enviasse uma tropa de cavaleiros como reforço.
What he required was a group of about 300 knights, well-trained, well-armed, that he could direct where he felt the threat was greatest. What he got was something completely different, something that he did not remotely in his wildest dreams expect to receive. Tens of thousands of fanatical, armed men who descended upon him like a series of pests, locusts coming down, in fact, is how one chronicler describes it. and they came down and they approached his great city, wave after wave after wave.
A leva de soldados enviada pelo rival e acampada diante dos portões era grande e poderia facilmente atacar a cidade. Seria impossível se defender. Mas Aleixo encontrou uma maneira de manipular a situação em vantagem própria.
The Emperor Alexius was a wicked and crafty man. He played the part of a scorpion, which when met face to face is harmless, but the tail of which is barbed with a poisonous sting it is well to avoid.
O imperador convidou os principais líderes da cruzada para entrar no átrio interno do Palácio Imperial. Ele sabia que poderia conquistar a confiança do Duque Godofredo e do Conde Balduíno. Mas os irmãos haviam se unido a outro comandante cruzado. Boemundo de Tarento era o filho mais velho de uma família de mercenários normandos que há pouco tomara o controle do sul da Itália.
He was somebody who attracted attention through his appearance and through his bearing. He was perhaps the greatest warrior of the whole expedition. He was said to have the ferocity of a lion, a starving lion, charging into a group of sheep.
A experiência bélica de Boemundo era de inestimável valia. Ele já havia enfrentado e vencido os muçulmanos na Sicília, e sua luta contra os bizantinos também era antiga. Mas Boemundo, bem como os outros líderes cruzados, era melhor soldado que político. Todos estavam prestes a ser enganados.
The emperor heard that Bohemond, that most distinguished man, had arrived. He ordered for him to be received with proper ceremony.
Then, once he'd settled in, with the Duke Godfrey and his brother Baldwin, he invited him to a secret conference. He planned how to entrap these Christian knights by fraud and cunning.
Grande parte do império de Aleixo estava nas mãos dos turcos. Ele queria suas terras de volta e não deixaria que fossem tomadas pelo exército católico. O imperador ainda guardava um trunfo na manga.
When they are in his lands, the one thing that they need is food. They're an army that is unprepared. It doesn't have supply chains like modern armies do. It's not all planned out ahead. They've got to live off the land. So Alexius can control and give them markets if they play the game. If they don't play the game with him, then he can withdraw those markets, and they are going to start suffering quite badly. It may provoke an outburst of bad behavior from them. They might start trying to ravage the land, but they realize sooner or later, because he has all the food, they've got to start doing business with Alexius. He knows that, and they know it too.
Em troca do suprimento de comida, os 3 líderes cruzados foram obrigados a jurar fidelidade ao imperador. O voto garantia a Aleixo o comando irrestrito da expedição, além da devolução ao império e à Igreja Ortodoxa de quaisquer terras que o exército católico tomasse dos turcos. Os cruzados atravessaram o rio Bósforo na companhia dos bizantinos, seus novos aliados. Mas os 2 grupos logo pisariam em território inimigo e essa frágil aliança passaria por um duro teste. A expedição deixou Constantinopla e deu início à marcha de mais de 1000 quilômetros em território hostil até Jerusalém. Algumas semanas depois, em maio de 1097, eles chegaram à primeira cidade dominada por inimigos. Niceia, atual Iznik, já fora uma cidade bizantina, mas 20 anos antes foi tomada pelos turcos e passou a ser fortaleza do novo sultão, Kilij Arslan.
Over the northern hills is where the Crusader army came from. They marched down from Constantinople, over the hills, and fanned out round the city, clamping it in an iron siege. finally the moment of conflict. And they must have been pretty excited, pretty hepped up. This was the enemy. This is where it's all going to start.
Mas invadir Niceia não seria tão fácil assim, pois a cidade era protegida por uma muralha de 5 quilômetros.
Attacking a city like this is really pretty difficult because these walls are very formidable. You can see them here, 10 meters high roughly, the towers here 30 meters apart. That means whatever way you approach the wall, people have got you in their sights as a very good, very easy target.
O cerco à cidade de Niceia durou 6 semanas. Apesar do combate acirrado, o exército católico estava confiante e se aproximava da primeira vitória. Embora tivessem prometido entregar a cidade ao imperador bizantino, os cristãos pretendiam se apoderar das riquezas de Niceia. O que o exército não esperava era ser traído pelo aliado. No flanco oeste da cidade encontra-se o grande lago Ascânio. Ali, no dia 18 de junho de 1097, os emissários do imperador bizantino deram início a um plano secreto para tomar a cidade e seus espólios.
The Byzantines had brought their ships onto the lake to help in the siege, but they used their ships for a quite different purpose. They secretly contacted the Turks within the city. They would much sooner surrender peacefully to the Byzantines than be chopped up into little pieces by the Crusaders who were obviously thirsting for their blood. And when morning breaks, there on the battlements of the city are the imperial flags flying. The city has surrendered.
A imagem da bandeira imperial bizantina hasteada na muralha causou fúria entre os cruzados. Eles foram traídos pelo falso irmão em Cristo, o imperador Aleixo.
When Alexius did that deal with the Turks and took Nicaea for himself, the Crusader army felt utterly betrayed. They were furious. The man who they trusted, who was supposed to be their ally, who they would have to trust on the future fights through Turkey and into the Holy Land, had gone behind their backs. This was a very, very bad sign for the future of the Byzantine Crusader alliance.
Sem os espólios de Niceia, os cruzados levantaram acampamento e avançaram em território inimigo com destino a Jerusalém. Mas eles não estavam sós. Do alto das colinas, o turco Kilij Arslan observava cada passo. Tomado pelo ódio, o sultão ansiava por vingar a fortaleza perdida.
Kilij Arslan, mindful of the injury done him, constantly brooded over the fact that through the Christians he had lost the excellent city of Nicaea. With all his heart he yearned to retaliate and determined to lay an ambush for his enemy.
O líder turco convocou sua força de combate de mais de 50.000 homens. Examinando as terras por onde os cristãos passariam, Kilij encontrou o lugar perfeito para o ataque surpresa. O confronto épico que ali aconteceu hoje faz parte da história das Cruzadas. A Batalha de Dorileia. Até hoje, nenhum estudioso foi capaz de encontrar o lugar exato da batalha. Mas John Franz passou anos em busca de pistas e acredita ter identificado o local.
We know certain things about this battle, but finding it is a different matter. We know that it took place at a junction of two valleys. We know there was a marsh But the thing that we really know is that this junction of two valleys must have provided an immense amount of space, because at one stage both armies deployed in full battle array, and that takes a lot of room.
O professor Franz refez o caminho percorrido pela expedição em 1097. Na época, a trilha era estreita e os cruzados andavam em pares, o que indica que os 60 mil homens levavam 3 dias para cruzar um ponto qualquer. A certa altura da marcha, um grupo de 20 mil homens liderados por Bohemundo se separou do restante e parou para acampar em um vale. Mal sabiam que aquele era o local escolhido por Kilij Arslan para sua emboscada.
This is really getting very flat and open. I think this looks like a place where two valleys meet. In fact, it really looks like a place where two valleys meet.
A 56 quilômetros de Niceia, John Franz mostra pela primeira vez o local onde foi travada a Batalha de Dorileia, a maior batalha das cruzadas.
This really is it. You've got to take away all the modern earthworks, this road. This is a flat plain at the junction of two valleys. It fits all the pictures, it's even slightly damp underfoot. This is it. This is where the battle took place, and we're standing on one of the really decisive battlefields of the crusading era.
Na madrugada de 1º de julho de 1097, dezenas de milhares de turcos atacaram os homens de Bohemundo acampados no vale. Analisando o verdadeiro local da batalha, o professor Franz pode imaginar como tudo aconteceu.
They were all mashed up in the camp, here by the jeep, desperately trying to get their defences up, and charging up at them, up the valley floor, are the Turks.
Para os homens que ali estiveram, foi uma batalha impossível de esquecer.
Bohemond said to his men, "Gentlemen, brave soldiers of Christ, you can see that we are encircled and that a hard battle lies ahead. Therefore let all knights go out like men and meet the enemy."
Os turcos avançavam furiosamente em direção ao indefeso grupo. Mesmo que morressem muitos turcos, morreriam ainda mais cristãos. À medida que cruzava o campo, a cavalaria desferia golpes hábeis em um estilo de combate ainda desconhecido para os cristãos. Aqueles não eram simples cavaleiros, eram arqueiros montados.
The Seljuk Turks were really first-class archers and very courageous. They attack very quickly. They're very light, unlike the Western European knights. They have smaller horses. They don't carry too much armors. They were really clever in shooting arrows from the back of the horse, riding at a very fast speed.
A nova técnica ajudou a dizimar a força de Bohemundo, composta por 20 mil homens. Mas essa não foi a única surpresa que os turcos reservaram para os cristãos.
The Turks surrounded us on all sides, throwing darts, casting javelins, and shooting arrows from an astonishing range.
Entender como os turcos atiravam de tão longe sempre foi um enigma. Mas nas entrelinhas de um pouco conhecido texto muçulmano da época, o Dr. Taef al-Azari descobriu o chamado Naukia, uma referência escrita em árabe antigo que talvez solucione o mistério.
The Naukia were a battalion inside the Turkish army of arrow foot soldiers soldier lay down with his back to the ground, and he used a huge bow with both muscles of his legs and fired a couple of 100 meters away. Sometimes in the sources we have stories like the sunlight disappeared for a couple of seconds because of the sheer number of the arrows.
Bohemundo perdera 4.000 homens e os turcos avançavam para o massacre final. Desesperado, ele ordenou que o restante mantivesse a posição em torno do campo. Mas não muito longe dali, a salvação se aproximava a galope.
The greater part of the army, under those illustrious and splendid men, Duke Godfrey, his brother Baldwin, and other warriors devoted to God, was advancing swiftly to the aid of their brethren.
Com a chegada dos exércitos de Godofredo e Balduíno, o número de cristãos subiu para 55.000.
The Turks found themselves, potentially at least, between an anvil and a hammer. And rather than face that, they broke and fled, very sensibly.
A soma das forças cruzadas deixou os turcos em visível desvantagem.
But it has to be said, the Turks fought brilliantly. Who would ever have praised so much the Turks, said one of the Crusaders, who were such fine soldiers, and had they been but Christians, would have been the equal of us.
Durante milênios, o solo sagrado do Oriente Médio foi banhado de sangue. Nessa terra, as cicatrizes deixadas pelas batalhas entre as 3 maiores religiões marcaram o mundo para sempre. Em julho de 1097, o poderoso exército turco de Kilij Arslan e a força cristã liderada por Bohemundo, Godofredo e Balduíno se enfrentaram na épica Batalha de Dorileia. O número de mortos foi grande para ambos os lados. Milhares de cristãos e muçulmanos perderam a vida em nome de Deus. Mas assim que os turcos bateram em retirada, os cruzados reiniciaram a obstinada marcha rumo a seu destino, a cidade sagrada de Jerusalém. Este é o conflito entre 2 povos de fé inabalável, o choque entre a meia-lua e a cruz. Estas são as Cruzadas. As Cruzadas. Os cristãos derrotaram o exército turco de Kilij Arslan em Dorileia. Mas o perigo de outra emboscada era iminente. Ao invés de tomar o caminho direto para Jerusalém, os cristãos optaram por uma rota mais segura que os levaria a cruzar as montanhas Antitauros. Alguns anos depois, um jovem cavaleiro relembrou a arriscada jornada.
We began to cross a damnable mountain, which was so high and steep that none of our soldiers dared to overtake one another on the mountain path. Horses fell over the precipice, and one beast of burden dragged another down.
Obrigados a caminhar em fila única, a travessia da montanha levou 3 semanas. Mas o pior ainda estava por vir. Os homens exaustos atravessaram as áridas planícies da Pisídia sob um calor de 32 graus centígrados.
The land was deserted, waterless and uninhabitable. We suffered greatly from hunger and thirst and found nothing at all to eat.
More than 500 of both sexes died at this time, prostrated by suffering. Most serious of all, their trusty steeds, companions in battle, on whom their masters depended for their own safety, and whose glory should be seen in prancing hoof and gleaming teeth, gave way like common beasts of burden.
Ao final da longa e sofrida marcha, apenas uma morte foi registrada entre a elite do grupo. Godelda, esposa de Balduíno, dos líderes da cruzada.
Gotthilda was a very, very wealthy woman. She would have held estates and had finances that Baldwin, as her husband, would have had a route into. If she died, these would go back to her family. He wouldn't have access to her. They would stay with her bloodline. Her death means that his chances of becoming rich when he went back home had gone. His mindset would change. He was now potentially on the lookout for lands, for territory, for wealth of his own. Within a day or so of her death, his policy became one of acquisition and greed.
Nenhum historiador faz menção ao luto de Balduíno, mas contam que ele reuniu uma centena de cavaleiros e partiu em missão solo. O conde decidiu que a melhor maneira de compensar a perda da esposa e sua fortuna era tomando uma cidade para si. O alvo perfeito encontrava-se a 160 quilômetros dali, o condado de Edessa.
Edessa is a wealthy city. It generates its own income through metalwork. It's a very fertile region. It's very close to the Euphrates River. It's also on the trade routes. So you've got spices and luxury cloths coming across from the east, passing through it, and then going to the Mediterranean for further trade. It's a really, really good spot for Baldwin to base himself.
A questão é que a cidade não estava nas mãos dos muçulmanos e havia bravamente resistido aos ataques turcos até então. Mas o povo cristão de Edessa estava cansado de constante investida muçulmana. E quando soube que um líder cruzado se aproximava, a cidade pediu ao governador Toros que convidasse Balduíno para ser seu aliado.
The governor of the city was a Christian Armenian called Thoros. He was a feeble old man, without child of either sex. He was a useless overlord. He was unable to protect his citizens from wrongs or to procure them relief from the dangers of attack from these cursed infidels.
A aliança com Balduíno tinha seu preço. Ele aceitaria proteger Edessa dos turcos em troca do total controle da cidade. O ingênuo Toros prometeu torná-lo rei somente depois de sua morte. O frágil governante selou seu destino ao adotar Balduíno como filho. Mas para o conde, a morte de Taurus não tardaria a chegar.
Baldwin discovered evil counselors in Edessa. Traitors who plotted with him to have Thoros murdered and who promised to hand Edessa over to him.
Taurus descobriu a traição do conselho tarde demais. Sua cabeça já estava a prêmio.
He took a rope and let it down from the tower. But immediately his destroyers shot him down into the middle of the street. And cutting off his head, they carried it on a spear through the quarters of the city for everyone to mock.
It's not a good start for crusading ideology, it has to be said. This is not a great moment in the idea that Christianity is going to come to save Eastern Christendom from the threat of Islam. The reality is that Baldwin has come with an eye to gaining territory, and I think he's prepared to remove physically and politically a figure who's Christian from power to get his own territory.
If there had been no Islam in that world, but you had had Eastern Christianity, which you had, after all, before the rise of Islam, exactly the same thing would have happened, but they would have had to find a different ideological colouring for it. They probably would have said, these are not proper Christians, we're the true Christians, like religious fundamentalists of all hues say. So, from that point of view, many Christians in that region also regarded the Crusaders as essentially Christian fundamentalist barbarians from the uncivilized lands of the north.
Enquanto Balduíno comemorava a tomada de Edessa, o exército cruzado principal chegava aos muros da grande cidade de Antioquia, a 240 quilômetros dali. A próspera Antioquia foi uma cidade cristã desde os tempos do apóstolo Pedro até 1085, quando os turcos tomaram o controle. Seria um prêmio superado apenas por Jerusalém, uma conquista digna de sacrifício. Os restos de Antioquia em nada lembram seu esplendor em outrora. Suas ruínas despertam pouco interesse nas colinas da Turquia. Mas para um jovem cavaleiro completando um ano de cruzada, a primeira visão da cidade em 1097 foi uma experiência única.
The city is surrounded by two walls, one of which is very high and amazingly broad. It's built with huge stones, and there are set up on it 450 towers. It's shut in by 4 mountains, and alongside the city walls runs a deep river. And everything about the city is beautiful.
I think the Crusaders want to take the city for a whole range of reasons. First and probably foremost is strategic. Antioch is literally the gateway to Syria and the gateway to the Holy Land. If they leave the city behind them, their route for escape and certainly their route for resupply and reinforcement is going to be cut off. Spiritually, it's almost to the equal of Jerusalem in many ways as a goal, because Antioch was, in Christian tradition, the site of the founding of the very, very first Christian church by St. Peter, the Apostle of Christ. So this gave it a real spiritual power and a spiritual cachet that I think the Crusaders were very empowered by.
A maioria da população de Antioquia era formada por armênios e cristãos grego-ortodoxos. Os governantes turcos lhes davam plena liberdade para cultuar sua fé, mas nada disso importava para os cruzados. Eles queriam retirar os turcos do poder e devolver a cidade ao controle cristão. Tomá-la de volta, porém, não seria fácil.
Antioch is a very well-defended city indeed. The walls surrounding the city, here high on the mountain, going down to the plain, are very massive. You can see that, the construction here. A strong, stout, thick inner core, faced with this fine exterior. Reinforced, of course, with a system of towers. The towers interlock with one another. This is the kind of wall you don't shift with a battering ram.
Os historiadores cristãos não foram os únicos a relatar a sangrenta disputa por Antioquia. Ibn al-Athir percorreu os 4 cantos colhendo histórias sobre os grandes heróis muçulmanos que resistiram aos cruzados, os então chamados francos. Sua célebre coletânea fala do corajoso líder de Antioquia, Yagysian.
Yagysian, the ruler of Antioch, showed unparalleled wisdom and courage, strength and judgment. If all the Franks who died attacking his city had survived, they would have overrun all the lands of Islam.
Ibn relatou como Yagysian, famoso pelas orelhas peludas e a barba grisalha, foi até as últimas consequências para afastar o inimigo. Mas ele sabia que qualquer cristão da cidade seria vulnerável à persuasão dos francos.
When he heard the approach of the Franks, he was not sure how the Christian people of the city would react. So he sent all the Muslims outside the city walls to dig trenches. And the next day, he sent the Christians by themselves to do the same task. When they were ready to return home at the end of the day, he refused to allow them in. Antioch is yours, he said. But you have to leave it to me until I found out what happens between us and the Franks.
Yagysian acreditava que a situação estava controlada. O passo seguinte era cuidar da massa de cruzados reunidos nos portões da cidade.
Yagysian is praised by all the sources about his good organization of the defense, night and day, night shifts, night guards, throwing oil at the crusaders, depriving them from food supplies, sending guards during the night to attack their camps, burn some of their tents, depriving them of water supplies. He really confronted the crusaders alone, and he fought vigorously to defend his city.
O esforço não foi em vão. Após 8 árduos meses, os cruzados não haviam avançado e estavam visivelmente desesperados. Além de a comida ser escassa, era preciso alimentar também os cristãos banidos. Com a passagem dos meses, os cruzados ficaram praticamente sem ter o que comer. O historiador Guilherme de Tiro narrou como os cruzados se viram obrigados a beber o sangue dos próprios cavalos.
Day by day, the shortage of provisions continued and the famine grew. And as a result, a pestilence broke out among the legions in the camp, so fatal that there was now scarcely room to bury the dead. With the loss of those who had wasted away through hunger and disease, and of others who had perished by the sword, the army had diminished to such an extent, it seemed as if barely half our numbers had survived.
Mas o sofrimento dos cruzados estava apenas começando. Em um texto islâmico da Idade Média, o Dr. Taef al-Azari descobriu como Yagysian conseguiu pedir reforços bem diante do nariz do exército cruzado.
The answer was this: a pigeon. The Seljuk Turks were the first one to invent the postal service, kind of DHL of today. They will attach a message to the bird's leg and set it free. In a matter of hours, the message will come across and the help will arrive from anywhere in the Muslim world.
Dois meses depois, um guardião avisou que um exército turco estava a caminho. Os cruzados não tinham tempo e precisavam invadir a cidade rapidamente. Foi Peomundo quem encontrou uma brecha na defesa da cidade, um traidor entre os soldados muçulmanos.
He was an armorer, a maker of breastplates, named Firuz. He worked at the tower that stood over the riverbed, where the water flowed from the city into the valley. He had long served the ruler of Antioch, Yagisyan. But he sealed a pact with the Franks. They bribed him with a fortune in money and lands.
Firuz was the commander not only of one tower, but of 3 towers. Bohemond really hit gold dust. For whatever reason, he was ready to betray the city. And as so often happens, it was betrayal that let the enemy in, not a storming of the city.
All the preparations were made. Towards dawn, the knights and the foot soldiers began to approach the towers of which Firuz was warden.
And our Captain Bohemond said to us, "Go on, strong in heart and lucky in your comrades, and scale the ladders into Antioch, for by God's will, this city shall be in our power in a trice."
What I'm looking for is what I've always wanted to find, which is Firuz's tower. Now, this is the foundation of a major tower, right on the angle of the wall where it plunges down to the south defences. And I don't think there can be anywhere else that this can be except the Tower of Firuz. The Crusaders had plenty of cover. They came up the hill beyond here, massed over this shelf. Firuz leaned over the wall and he swung a lantern.
We took the ladders and lashed them to the battlements of the city. An amazing number of men began to climb.
But then, of course, disaster. The ladder broke.
Era tarde demais para voltar. E o grupo continuou a escalar a muralha da Torre de Firuz. Em questão de minutos, a cidade foi tomada e os portões foram abertos para os outros soldados.
They flung the gateway open, and the men funneled into the city.
Depois de 8 meses de fome e doenças, não havia lugar para compaixão na vida dos cruzados. Guiados pelos cristãos locais, eles arrastaram os muçulmanos para fora das casas e das mesquitas. E os mataram indiscriminadamente.
The shrieks of countless people rose, making a terrifying noise throughout the city. But Bohemond did not waste any time on this account and ordered his glorious banner to be carried and set up on top of a wall opposite the citadel. Every street on every side was full of corpses, so that no one could endure to be there because of the stench. Nor could they walk along the narrow paths of the city, except over the bodies of the dead.
Everyone really was really massacred, was killed. The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, and then spare really children or women or elderly, and they were really avenging and proving that they are really superior and they are the true and new master to the territory.
O único habitante de Antioquia que conseguiu escapar foi Yagisyan, o governante turco. Xian pagou um preço alto pela fuga.
Yaghi Xian was told they had taken the citadel. Panic seized him, and he opened the gates and fled with an escort of 30 pages.
When he recovered his self-control, he repented having rushed to safety instead of staying there and fighting to the death. He started groaning and weeping. When he was at his last gasp, a shepherd passed by, killed him, cut off his head, and took it to the Franks at Antioch.
A cabeça de Yaghi Xian não serviu de consolo. Bohemundo tinha maiores preocupações. O pombo-correio de Xian cumpriu sua missão e o reforço turco chegou à cidade no dia seguinte à sua morte. Aqueles que antes sitiaram passariam agora a ser sitiados. Em junho de 1098, depois de 8 meses de sítio, os cruzados finalmente tomaram a cidade de Antioquia. Ironicamente, eles inverteram os papéis com o inimigo e se tornaram prisioneiros das muralhas da cidade invadida. Do outro lado, os turcos se preparavam para atacar.
This is a pretty desperate situation. Morale is rock bottom. Everybody is frightened, and quite reasonably so. They look as though they're dead. And in this desperate situation, the basic motivation of the Crusaders comes out. Their belief, the belief of the leading members, that somehow God is on their side.
Os cruzados rezaram por um milagre e foram atendidos. Espalhou-se a notícia de que Deus falara com um cruzado por meio de uma visão.
Well, we have to distinguish visions from imaginations. A real vision comes from God, actually. Yeah? It is the work of the Holy Spirit.
O cruzado era um simples padre francês do chamado baixo clero, mas sua visão inspirou um exército inteiro.
He was a pilgrim by the name of Peter Bartholomew.
One night, so he said, St. Andrew the Apostle appeared to him and said, "Know, my son, that if you go to the church of the Blessed Peter in the city of Antioch, there you shall find the Holy Lance, the spear with which our Saviour Jesus Christ was pierced when he was hanging on the cross." And he swore that the whole story was true.
A verdadeira lança que transpassou Jesus na cruz estava há séculos desaparecida. Encontrá-la naqueles tempos de crise seria o mesmo que estabelecer uma poderosa ligação entre os cruzados e o próprio Cristo.
There can't be real relics of Christ because Jesus rose from the dead and he went up to his Father in heaven, so there are no remains. So it cannot be. Only what has touched him or what he has touched, like the cross or the Holy Lance.
It's very significant that he seizes upon the idea of a simple relic, nothing complex, a simple relic, a signal from God that everybody can focus on, that is unarguable, undisputable. It isn't a story, it isn't just a vision, it's a solid metal token of God's will.
Pedro Bartolomeu reuniu um grupo de 12 discípulos e invadiu a pequena igreja para escavar o chão onde afirmava estar enterrada a lança sagrada. Depois de um dia e uma noite de trabalho, restava pouca esperança. Até que Pedro Bartolomeu entrou novamente na igreja e saiu com uma haste enferrujada de metal. O padre proclamou ter encontrado a relíquia. Uma afirmação ridicularizada pelos historiadores árabes.
The holy man who proclaimed that the Messiah had a lance buried in the church was an extremely wily monk. He told them all, if you find it, you'll be victorious. Otherwise, you'll face a certain death. But before saying this, he went and buried the lance in the soil under the church. And then he covered his tracks.
The holy relics is a very interesting thing because as the crusading armies went, the number of holy relics multiplied. And people who wanted to make the equivalent of a quick buck went and found more and more holy relics. As to what these objects really were is, one can imagine anything. But the fact that they needed them shows that these holy relics became a primitive form of propaganda.
It's a matter of faith. What I say now, there are people with special gift from God who can distinguish in holy things and also in relics, which can say this is authentic, the other thing is not authentic. But it's a matter of faith.
The people in the army recovered their morale, their fighting will. This is a moment of violent religious exaltation. The mood in the army changes, aggression replaces defeatism. This is an army ready to fight.
Six lines of battle were drawn up by those of us inside the city. We closed our ranks and, protected by the sign of the cross, we went out by the gate. When the Turks saw our squadrons so well drawn up, coming out one after the other, they said, "Let them come, so that we may have them the more surely in our power." But once we were all outside, and the Turks saw how great was the force of the Franks, they were much afraid.
Embora contassem com apenas 200 cavalos, os cruzados enfrentaram o inimigo de frente, empunhando a lança sagrada recém-descoberta. Mas uma testemunha falou de outra visão. Um exército de espíritos enviados por Deus.
Then appeared a countless host of men on white horses, whose banners were all white. When our men saw this, they did not understand what was happening or who these men might be, until they realized this was the blessed help sent by Christ. The Turks fled in terror, and with God's help we defeated them.
Fosse visão real ou apenas um truque para levantar o moral dos cruzados, a verdade é que Antioquia estava novamente nas mãos dos cristãos, mas jamais voltaria para o controle da Igreja e do Império Bizantino. Boemundo quebrou a promessa feita a Aleixo um ano antes e se autoproclamou príncipe de Antioquia.
When Bohemond decided to hold on to Antioch, he had completely broken his promise to Alexius. The idea that he would return lands that he conquered to the Byzantine emperor was in tatters. He had also fractured and destroyed one of the basic ideas, one of the pillars, the catalyst of the First Crusade. The idea of Pope Urban that the Western Church would work with the Byzantines to defeat the Muslims of the Near East was no longer sustainable.
Grandes extensões de terras estavam sob o domínio cristão. Balduíno comandava a região de Edessa e Boemundo a cidade de Antioquia. os dois se tornaram muito ricos. No final de 1098, os dois líderes cruzados se dedicavam inteiramente ao comando de seus principados e questionavam a necessidade de marchar para Jerusalém.
There are huge arguments right across the range of the leaders, all the way through different levels of the army, about where the crusade should go next. Should they immediately try to march on Jerusalem? Should they recover their strength? How long should they wait? What route should they take? And the potential is for the army to literally just fall apart, to go into different directions, for people to start returning home, to lose their impetus entirely. And it comes very close to this.
Enquanto os líderes debatiam, os soldados insistiam para que a marcha seguisse para Jerusalém. Para eles, a verdadeira intenção da cruzada havia sido esquecida. Todo o rancor e frustração finalmente vieram à tona em Ma'ara al-Numan, numa cidadezinha a 2 dias de cavalgada de Antioquia.
So this is where the legacy of the First Crusade really took place. I think it's a landmark for any historian to visit this place. This is where the First Crusader really made their violent legacy.
Este local seria palco da maior atrocidade cometida pelos cristãos na Primeira Cruzada. Esta é a primeira visita do Dr. Taef al-Azari a Ma'ara al-Numan, o local da maior barbárie da Primeira Cruzada. Localizada no extremo noroeste da Síria, esta cidade do século XI nunca foi esquecida. Suas ruínas, que hoje servem de parque para as crianças, escondem momentos de selvageria.
I think we are really making our way into the citadel of Ma'arat, and to the left the remains of the mosque, and to the right hand the remain of the little palace for the ruler of the city. Probably this was a church serving the Christian population of Ma'arat and Nu'man, who were living peacefully side by side with their fellow Muslims. And of course the Crusaders were really indiscriminate about killing all the inhabitants of Ma'ara, regardless of their faith or their religion.
Enquanto os cruzados consolidavam o controle das terras de Antioquia, um pequeno contingente liderado por Bohemundo chegou à região em novembro de 1098.
We came to the city named Murat, not far off, in which many Turks and Saracens lived. Bohemond sent an interpreter to the Saracen leaders to tell them if they, with their wives and children and goods, would take refuge in a palace just above the city gates, he would spare them from death. All our men entered the gates. Each of them seized his own share of whatever goods he could find in all the houses and cellars. And towards dawn, everybody was killed.
بعدين فجأة في عام 1099 ظهر جيش أوروبي جاي من فرنسا من إيطاليا. The sources really tell us about the suffering for all the inhabitants. Some of them were really lit in fire, and people were really just fried inside, burned alive inside. Some managed to escape. Of course, they cannot really escape the butchery of the Crusaders, decapitated or knifed 1,000 times. 20,000, 25,000 were really massacred inside the town. Not only the Muslims were massacred, also Christians as well. Not only soldiers, but also children, elderly, women met their violent fate. So it was really a war crime place, kind of an ethnic cleansing.
traição e depois o massacre tornaram-se símbolos do exército cruzado. Mas, segundo algumas testemunhas cristãs, foi o que aconteceu depois da carnificina que pôs em destaque a história de Ma'ara al-Numan.
The Franks stayed in the city for 1 month and 4 days. And while we were there, some of our men could not satisfy their needs. Either because we were there too long, or because they were so hungry, for there was no plunder to be had outside the city walls. So they ripped up the bodies of the dead, and others cut the dead flesh into slices and cooked it to eat. Our troops boiled pagan adults in cooking pots. They impaled children on spits to devour their flesh.
There is no such thing as a spiritual war. When you fight a war, the aim of that war is to defeat your enemy. They involve violence, they involve threats, they involve propaganda, and they involve, let's put it like this, shock and awe. And the eating of human flesh was designed to strike fear in the heart of the enemy. Here we are strong, we are tough, and if necessary, we'll eat you up alive. And to a certain extent, that succeeded. I mean, there was a wave of horror and fear. They eat us. And if they're eating us dead tomorrow, they might eat us alive.
Para os líderes da cruzada, a barbárie em Ma'ara era a prova de que seus homens não suportavam mais esperar. Era chegada a hora de cumprir a promessa e tomar a cidade pela qual arriscaram tudo em nome de Deus. Para eles, era irrelevante o fato de que Jerusalém fora tomada pelos Fatimidas do Egito, uma força muçulmana mais conciliadora que ansiava pela paz. Em junho de 1099, 13.000 cruzados, menos de 1/4 do número que partiu da Europa, chegaram aos portões da cidade em que Jesus Cristo morreu.
When the Crusaders reached the walls of Jerusalem, they finally arrived at their goal. After 3 years, 3,000 miles marching, the most incredible suffering, terrible, terrible losses, they'd arrived at the holy city. Some were so overwhelmed with emotion they wept, others prostrated themselves on the ground. But now, of course, the hardest task of all faced them. They had to break in.
Depois de 3 anos de marcha, o exército cruzado estava prestes a atacar Jerusalém. Os muros de 15 metros de altura e 3 de espessura intimidavam. A escalada exigiria escadas e torres de cerco, mas os muçulmanos haviam cortado todas as árvores das cercanias. Os cristãos se dividiram em grupos e saíram em busca de madeira. Em uma cova aberta, eles encontraram 400 pedaços de madeira cortada. Parecia que, mais uma vez, Deus estava do lado deles. Era material suficiente para construir 2 torres de 12 metros e finalmente invadir a cidade de Jerusalém. Estava tudo preparado para o confronto final. No dia 14 de julho de 1099, os cruzados lançaram um ataque duplo. Uma das torres foi levada para o lado norte de Jerusalém e a outra para o lado sul. Os muçulmanos sabiam que se apenas um grupo alcançasse o topo da muralha, a cidade sucumbiria.
You can look up at these walls and imagine missiles, stones, arrows raining down upon you. The fighting was barbaric and intense, and at one point the Crusaders gave the phrase live ammunition its literal meaning. They captured a Muslim, strapped him to a catapult and fired him back over the walls.
No lado sul, os muçulmanos arremessaram jarros de óleo incandescente contra a torre até que ela pegasse fogo. Restava a torre do lado norte, cujos homens estavam sob o comando do destemido general da cruzada, o Duque Godofredo.
Godfrey decided upon a change of plan. I've got here an eyewitness account written by a man called Raymond of Aguirre. This is what he said. Godfrey moved to a position between the Church of the Blessed Stephen and the Valley of Josaphat.
Mas o plano de Godofredo não era infundado. O líder cristão descobriu o ponto fraco da fortaleza a 2 quilômetros a nordeste da cidade. Algumas horas depois, e protegidos pela escuridão, seus homens e a torre seguiram para o lado menos resguardado da cidade.
Here we are, the spot that the Crusaders broke into Jerusalem.
Os muçulmanos fizeram uma última e vã tentativa de destruir a torre de Godofredo.
They used grappling irons to try and snare the tower, to use the hooks to catch the wood, and then remarkably to pull the thing over. To counter this, the Crusaders had an enormous scythe made that would cut through these ropes. At one moment there was a brief fire there up on the walls. Godfrey saw this and lowered a makeshift bridge from his tower onto the battlements.
A muralha foi vencida e só restava aos muçulmanos fugir. Era chegada a hora de os cristãos finalmente tomar Jerusalém.
We chased the Saracens, and killing them all the way up to Solomon's temple. Before long, its walls were streaming with blood. We killed both men and women, cutting off their heads with our drawn swords. The surviving Saracens dragged the dead bodies out in front of the city gates and piled them up in mounds as high as houses. No one has ever seen or heard such slaughter of pagans. For they burnt them on pyres as high as pyramids. No one knew how many there were. Except God. Jerusalem is ours.
But the fact that against all the odds, seemingly in a miracle, this crusade took Jerusalem and achieved what it had set out to do, that seemed a very clear indication that God's hand was at work, and that its participants and all of Western Europe suddenly thought, this is true, God really does want a crusade to happen, God really is behind this venture.
Quase 3 anos depois de deixar sua terra natal, o Duque Godofredo se tornava o novo governante cristão de Jerusalém. Humildemente, ele recusou a coroa de rei da cidade em que Jesus Cristo reinara, e ali faleceu cerca de 1 ano depois. Mas Balduíno, o traiçoeiro senhor de Edessa, não se fez de rogado. O homem em que nada lembrava o caráter íntegro do irmão prontamente assumiu a coroa da cidade sagrada. A notícia do sucesso da primeira cruzada correu à Europa. Mas o Papa Urbano, a verdadeira inspiração que levou 60.000 homens a percorrer 5.000 quilômetros, morreu antes de saber que Jerusalém estava em mãos cristãs pela primeira vez em 400 anos. Jerusalém tinha menos de 800 metros de extensão. Dentro de suas muralhas, os cruzados massacraram cerca de 30 mil muçulmanos e judeus. Notícias da chacina abalaram o mundo islâmico.
The Crusades had a very deep impact on Arab society. One, they were seen as a barbarian incursion, and stories of those crusades are still told in cafes and in families as if they happened yesterday. This is something quite striking. And so whenever the West has invaded that region again, people say it's another crusade, which is why after the awful events of 9/11, when the American president inadvertently, one assumes, said we now have to wage a crusade to stop this, a shiver went down the collective spine of the Islamic world, because they felt they knew what was coming.
Enquanto os cruzados celebravam a vitória e consolidavam a posse da Terra Santa, os muçulmanos pacientemente se preparavam para contra-atacar. Mal sabiam os invasores que a fúria islâmica logo se abateria sobre o reino cristão de Jerusalém.